All right, good morning, everyone. We are coming to you guys live, finally again, from American Top Team, Watertown, the birthplace of Cage Side Convos. I am Rick Huntsman.
And this is Quince, we're back.
Yeah, so we're 6 feet apart, and here we're practicing our social distancing. I know it might not look like that, but we got the tape measure out and made sure.
Yeah, it looks closer on camera.
Yeah,
you know,
it's
it
optical.
It adds feet.
Yeah,
Like
camera adds 6 inches. I don't know if we want to leave with that. Yeah, so we're finally the gym. We're reopened on kind of a one-on-one training basis. So we took that opportunity, figured this could be our one-on-one training session for the day. We just have to turn on the camera again back at home.
Sure. It's not only do we get to come back, hang out with you guys, but even just getting back into the gym. And we had that little one-on-one session earlier, man, and the shit is starting to feel normal again. You remember. So that in itself is a good feeling, you know, and something to appreciate. And a lot of things are coming back around. I think maybe the retail stores are opening up, and there are some restaurants that are, you know, carefully and cautiously opening it up, which I think is great. You know, I find a lot of people, you know, you guys have taken a lot of precautions as far as, you know, how you're coming back. It's not just going right back to what it was. So that's good to see. And out in the world, people with their masks and keeping their distance. And so, you know, I'm looking forward to seeing how all of this progresses and getting back to work, honestly.
Absolutely, man. I think a lot, I mean, obviously there's a lot of articles and stuff popping up that there's still an increase, there's a steady uptick in cases and stuff like that. And the unfortunate reality of the situation is that is kind of to be expected, you know. But I think as long as we keep, you know, the gym, we're increasing the emphasis on hygiene. I mean, not to brag or anything, but the gym's always been kept clean. We're just kind of reinforcing some of that stuff, keep, you know, spreading people out a little bit and all that. But I think it's good for us to be, you know, even without COVID being present, just being a little more mindful of how shit gets transmitted and all that, and staying a little disciplined, staying a little more focused on what we're doing on a day-to-day basis, right?
Yeah.
Did you like that seamless plug?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna adjust this real quick. That being said, we decided this week would be a good time to talk about discipline. And kind of a little bit, so like you said, things are kind of starting to get back to normal. It's such a relative term because I think we chatted a little bit earlier about just different ways that we were able to kind of stay disciplined through when everything changed. And the couple of conversations we did get to have over the course of the lockdown, we talked about things we were doing to stay consistent and stuff like that. So when you find that discipline, the external stimulus, it doesn't really matter so much. You know, so whatever normal is to everybody else, or whatever the normal that comes back around, it's already normal for us. You know, and you know, it's nice to get back in here and hammer on the bags or hit pads and do stuff like that. But
I mean, you know, because essentially we have our own individual day-to-day goals. And even when the situation changes, the goals don't necessarily change. As we talked about before, you know, the same rules apply. And so I spent a lot of time adapting and readjusting and readapting as the time went on, you know, but nonetheless, I had to get exercise in. You know, I had to do something that stimulated my mind, and something that stimulated, you know, just that, you know, almost that, you know, spiritual side. And earlier this morning, before we hopped into the one-on-one sessions, we were talking about the routines that we came up with outside of this that we had grown so accustomed to. Like you know, had been going up to the trails up at the park, Thompson Park, running the trails, and actually making use and taking advantage of that little, what do you call it, the fitness path, the fitness circle out there, getting my pull-ups and everything in. And I was learning to love that, you know, you know, loving being outside and working outside, and almost kind of having all that space to myself. And you were telling me how, you know, you had your bag set up at home, and you'd work on that, and you'd play with your dog, and then you'd go and hop in the in the creek or whatever. And so really what changed, you know, really what changed. You were still putting the work in and doing it in a way that you found that brought you enjoyment and fulfillment.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and I think discipline has a definite role to play in that.
Right.
And, you know, that helps us with our consistency, that helps us overcome obstacles and stay self-motivated. And one of the things that stands out to me is that when we speak of discipline, we talk about mental toughness and mental fortitude and, you know, how it's mind over matter. But what I don't think we talk about enough is emotional discipline.
Sure.
You know,
sure.
Because I think that in initial reactions to things and to situations, our emotions are the first thing to hit us.
Yeah.
I think the emotion definitely beats our intellectual response.
Of course, yeah.
And so to be aware of these things and to kind of know yourself and to know how you do respond and react, and to be able to get a handle on that definitely puts you ahead.
Yeah.
You know, ahead of the rest, because having to adapt to all these situations emotionally, you could have been like, you know, F this, what's the point? This sucks. I don't want to do it. But to somebody, right?
Yeah, I got Cassie Huntsman. Yeah, yes, we are 6 foot apart. If you want, I'll go get the tape measure. We measured it earlier. See, we can't even touch each other.
See,
6 feet apart. I don't know why you got to come in all late. We covered that at the beginning of the conversation. My little sister just chiming in to talk shit. She can't ever say anything nice.
Right.
So,
but she made it on though. That's the important
yeah, that's
thing.
the important thing.
Hey, Cassie.
So, yeah. So that emotional discipline. That one of the things that we talked about. The first convo we did after the gym closed for the beginning of the pandemic, I came over and we did one from your place.
Yep.
And one of the things I was struggling with at the time was understanding the emotional response I was having to the situation, my frustration, anger, sadness, a lot of these emotional things I was going through at the time, which I think are very common for a lot of people. It took me a while to understand, okay, this is an emotional response, and I still have goals. I still have long-term, a place I want to be long-term.
Right.
I have desires that I want to still focus on, and discipline, I think, is being able to understand that the exact shape of my actions doesn't have to be the same every single day, but the intent of them has to be the same. We got my friend Monty chiming in. Monty, what's up, man? How are you? Alex, what's going on, boys? Thanks for jumping on. Thanks for saying hey. Hope you guys are out there doing well. Alex Slurry, Monty Swilling.
Yeah, good to be back in
local gyms.
More ways than one. Yeah. Al, my buddy in the band Out Chasing Lions, and we've been itching to get back into the studio, and we've all been patient, plotting on our next move and just kind of waiting to see how the world opens up and what it allows us to do. And I think staying ready and having people around you that stay ready when you do get that green light, man, it's a go.
Yeah. But and I mean that ties perfectly into that discipline though too, is that the notion of staying ready and how we stay ready is going to look different because the outside stimulus are always going to be different. So we talked a little bit with CK a couple weeks ago about planning versus worrying and stuff like that, and making sure we have, we can kind of troubleshoot certain things. Say, okay, if this happens, this is how we respond. If this happens, this is how we respond. But that's it's making a logical decision to respond logically to what are often emotional stimulus.
Yep.
Absolutely. But that gives us the ability to stay ready because having for a long time suffered with trying to understand and deal with depression and alcoholism and stuff like that myself. I know that there were times where I was just like deep in that pit of like self-loathing and despair inside, and when I wasn't ready for anything because I was very overwhelmed by the emotional stimulus that were taking place in my mind, whether it was environmentally driven, internally driven, whatever, situationally driven, whatever the stimulus was. But when you adhere to the emotions, because the emotions are fleeting and temporary, and if you adhere to that, then your mind's always going to change, your your actions are going to change, your goals are going to change, everything's just going to be in a constant state of flux.
Right.
You know, but when you find that discipline to say, okay, emotionally, this is how I feel, and that's okay. I think it's very important. A lot of people talk about controlling emotions, which I think controlling emotions actually creates more problems than it solves.
Sure, suppressing.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think that you should try to force yourself to not be sad or to not be mad, you know, but I think it's important to accept that you feel that way, to honor that emotion, because if you feel sad, legitimately, that's how your mind, that's how your soul is reacting to the situation.
It's telling you something.
Exactly.
It's got something to say.
And it's okay, but our actions are always in our control. It's important to control our actions.
Yeah.
And that's that kind of emotional discipline.
Absolutely. Because I think the old school of thought, you know, especially when it comes to, I would say for men, is to, you know, suppress those emotions.
Sure.
That emotions are more of a feminine energy.
Sure.
So I think naturally that's kind of how we're taught to deal with them. But as the science proves, and this doesn't, you know, this is men, women, kids, it doesn't matter. But the suppression of emotions and certain things always stem to come out in other ways, in other impulses, whether it's, you know, those bouts of anger, negative reactions, whether it's drugs and alcohol, or what have you. You know, people have their vices that they kind of latch onto because they don't really have any place to put all of these pent-up emotions. Because if you can't accept them, understand them, and let them go, which is all part of a process, then they're going to stay with you. You know, and they're going to come out one way or the other. So, you know, you're 100% right in order to be able to let them go. You do have to accept it. You have to understand what they're telling you about the situation, about what you're going through. You know, that's just that's all part of the process of, you know, being able to release that and move on, because it was a great point that you made in regards to the emotions themselves are fleeting.
Right.
You know, you know, because they're separate from the intellect. You know, an idea in what one that you come up with in your mind is sturdy. You know what I mean? You can keep coming to this idea time and time again. But the emotions, which we were talking about before, natural reaction. You know, that's a part of the body that we have hardly any control over. And so to understand that and to work alongside with it, and not, we don't need to dominate it, you know, and we certainly don't want to be in a position to be dominated by them either. So, you know, both sides, extremes of that spectrum, are places that we want to stay away from. Absolutely. And it's more about a balance with them.
It's Monty chiming in. That's true. Bottle them up, those emotions, and they'll end up breaking the bottles. Yes. End up breaking. I like that. I think of the metaphor I kind of go to is just like the boiling kettle on the stove, the tea kettle, you know, and when it finally releases, you know, that whistle goes off. That's kind of explosive. But I like how Monty said, you bottle up and the bottles break. Right. So all these metaphors that we go to, it's a violent reaction, and it's a negative reaction, right? So you shatter that bottle, and people always think of violence as kind of like person to person, but an explosion is a violent. It's a very aggressive, it's a very fast thing that happens, right? So typically we bottle all that stuff up and we hold it in. And what is the usual manifestation of somebody that's bottling up sadness or frustration, right? It's violence, it's anger, right? A lot of like domestic violence, or domestic abuse situations come from the dude, you know, the cliche is the husband gets home from a long day of work and he's just frustrated with work and stuff, and then he hits his wife or his kids or kicks the dog or something like that. You know what I mean? That's obviously the gender isn't so important, but that's typically the metaphor, because like you said, the cliche is that for men it's feminine, it's not good to show emotion, you know? So these emotions bottle up, and I mean, fuck, man, you look at even the protests right now, and the way the violence is escalating is wherever you stand. I mean, draw the line between the rioters and the protesters and the looters. They're obviously not all the same thing, but the fact is this is a large scale example of what happens when people bottle stuff up and a community is frustrated. right? The backlash against police brutality is that the community itself feels like it's been subjugated by police brutality, and that it feels like it's been bottled up for years and years and years and years. Since Rodney King, so it's been 30 years since the last time these bottles broke. You know, and it's happening again. It's very violent, it's very explosive, and it's very counterproductive because having these discussions is uncomfortable. We bottle up these emotions, and now this is the end result. You know, and however you feel about it, whichever side that you feel like you align to, I think the agreement can be made that this is all a sign of frustration amongst the community. You know?
And it's not just race relations. You know, there have been protests for other reasons. You know, even when people were frustrated and not understanding the situation we were in regards to COVID-19, and businesses shutting down, and you know, us not allowed to make our money, spend our money, and there were protests and reactions against that. People that were frustrated and bottled up, and they felt like they weren't being heard. And again, you know, 4 or 5 years, or longer than that, but what was that, Occupy Wall Street? You know, and the discrepancy between the 1% and those with nothing were frustrated and felt like they weren't being heard, and that their emotions weren't being recognized. And it keeps continuing on. You know, it's, you know, any of these emotions, frustrations, anger, fear, that gets bottled up comes out in the way that you could turn on your TV today. You know, you can hop on your social media, and for a lot of cities, you can look right outside your window and see what that amounts to. And of course, on both sides, emotional discipline could benefit. You know, whether it's people's reaction to the bullshit, or say even, and you're right, it is at times the difference between protesting and looting. You know, you know, say for a cop, if you're standing your ground and you're watching peaceful protesters, and you know, they're using their given rights to do what they do, and they've got purpose to do what they do. And now if within that group there are people that say something, you know, and whether it's to the group of cops, whether it's just to you, and they point you out individually, and they say some shit that gets under your skin, and that's what you react off, because your emotional discipline doesn't allow you to say, hey, this is not about me personally. You know, this is not a personal thing. They're frustrated, they're angry. And that's what I respond to and react to. And now your lack of ability to have that emotional discipline just creates that domino effect. Now the crowd is going to react, you know, react in a similar fashion. And you know,
and that's never a peaceful situation. You know, it's that violent, it's that volatile response. You know. You know, and so it goes. You know, we see it. It's all over the world right now. It's all over the world. So I think that's why, one of the main reasons why this was such a natural topic to kind of come back to. Because you know, it's not the first time we've talked about discipline, and it's certainly not going to be the last. But you know, it's everywhere around us right now. And it makes it. You know, we kind of exploring and kind of letting it flow, talking about emotional discipline and stuff, and. I didn't plan the conversation to go to, you know, kind of current events and stuff like that, but it makes sense. So, you know, it ties in perfectly, and I think it's something that resonates with everyone. You know? And people on both sides, like you look at Facebook, man, and you try to engage in discourse, and you try to engage in a discussion, and the second you say something that offsets somebody emotionally, and they respond emotionally, it's negative, man. It's name calling. It's you're stupid. It's you're sheeple, is one of the, you know, like you're misled, or you just believe everything you see in the media, you're an idiot, and then
true communication fails.
You know, friggin' everyone's a libtard or a snowflake or you know, a bigot, and instead of just understanding like, okay, man, that's emotionally fine, like that's getting me a little fired up. That's the reason I'm having this is because emotionally I feel driven to have this discussion. But what you know, it should be a purposeful discourse too. You know what I mean? And take like, what do I want out of this conversation? So the microcosm of the conversation reflects on kind of the higher
truth.
Higher truth. You know, discipline and the lifestyle discipline we can extract. Right. So in a conversation, if I approach you with a topic, my goal for the conversation, this is personally, my personal goal for every conversation is to understand better, is to learn, is to grow, right? That's the purpose of every conversation I have. So if I let my emotions get in the way and I let my discipline falter and I start participating in name calling and volatile and violent reactions with the other person, then I'm never going to reach my goal of learning or of growing or of understanding, right? I don't need to be right. I want to know what is right. You know what I mean? And it's a direct quote from my jiu-jitsu coach. He said,
I was going to say that was money, man.
No, yeah, it was beautiful. Yeah, Coach Paul, he said that we were having a discussion a couple years ago, and he said, you know, as far as like political discourse and stuff goes, he's like, I don't always need to be right. I want to know what is right. Now, when it comes to jiu-jitsu, he's always right. So I hope Coach Paul's watching this and I get a tongue lashing for that one. But that being said, I think that's very pertinent because that just reflects on what is the goal of the conversation. The goal of the conversation is to grow my understanding, is to understand something from a different point of view. I don't have to agree, and a lot of times I think the shit that a lot of my friends say is absolutely deplorable. I've engaged with conversations and people say some racist, bigoted, ignorant shit, and unfortunately, the reality of that situation is that has no impact on me. How they feel, right? I can find a certain way to say, I find you morally repugnant, and then walk away from the conversation, right? I don't have to say you're a racist bigot and a fucking moron. Right. I can believe that, I can feel that can be my emotional response, you know, but ultimately, I understand that person better. They showed me their colors. All right, I do not like who you are as a person. I'm not going to engage with you anymore because you don't bring anything to the table. Right. But it doesn't get to that volatile and that aggressive point of, you know, lacking discipline. So I still reach my goal. Right. You know, and but I think, like I said, I think in life we assign ourselves a goal. The discipline is getting to that goal. You know, whatever it takes, whatever emotions we have to feel along the way.
Absolutely,
you know?
Absolutely. And we are going to feel emotions along the way because we're supposed to, because we're human beings. We're emotional beings. And so to have them, especially in conversation with opposing sides, and to have the emotions, like I said, is very natural. And to get to that point of ultimate understanding is going to take emotional discipline on both sides. And you know, you might fuck up here and there and just naturally, being a human, and have to readjust and gather yourself and get back into the conversation. And that's understood. But what also has to be understood are those who are not there for the same reason. Right. Those who don't care about an ultimate truth, only care about their truth. So they don't really need, that same, or they don't pay attention to, or pay respect to emotional discipline. Oftentimes you find that they use that against people, you know, and they only try to instigate the emotion from people. So things fall apart into that chaos, because now they can't be proven wrong, or now they're proven right because you lose your, you know, you lose your cool, or whatever that is.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. And their goal is not the same as yours. Like you said, their goal is to dominate. Their goal is to establish superiority. Their goal is to be better. Yeah. And that if we have conflicting goals, there's no point in having a conversation. Sure. As long as we both have the same goal, if my goal is to dominate, if your goal is to dominate, then we will fight and use emotional, you know, fire, and nothing productive is going to come of that. But we'll both reach our goal. Well, one of us will reach the goal, or we'll both think that we reached the goal and we'll walk away hating the other person. You know. But if my goal is to understand and your goal is to dominate, fine. Yeah. I'm not going to take my goal is unattainable in the situation because it's not a shared effort. Right. I'll walk away. You can dominate. That's perfectly fine with me.
You know, and this is something that even as a kid I understood. I grew to understand, and not that I defined it by emotional discipline or you know, anything like that. But as a kid, and when I came up north, you know, I looked different, and I had my little fro and shit like that, and it was always at the bus stop, you know, after school or before school, that all the shit would pop off. And whether it was something about, you know, how my hair was different, my name was weird, or not having money, or whatever else that came with it, of course, what's gonna happen is your kids, you know, you're gonna scrap.
Yeah.
You know, and you're gonna scrap. You're gonna do it time and time again. And then I'm like, hold on. Does me fighting each and every one of these kids change it?
Right.
It might change what they say to me next time, but it doesn't change who they are.
Yeah.
So even as a kid, I'm like, I can say some shit, or I can swing on every single person that tries to demean me because of how I look, or I can learn to not let that shit bother me.
Yeah.
And I noticed when I did that, I could see it in their eyes. When I saw it in their eyes, when I didn't let them know that it bothered me, because that was the first step. At first, it did bother me. Yeah. You just don't let them know it bothers you, and eventually it doesn't. But when they saw that it didn't bother me, that is when they got, you know, that's when they got uncomfortable. That's when they got mad, because they wanted it to bother me. They needed it to bother me. Yeah. And when they saw that they couldn't, they had no more power. Yeah. There was no more power. There was no more energy exchange, and that's how they got this shit. Yeah. And their kids as well, so they weren't interpreting it in that way either. Right. But it was something I learned just because of the unique situation I was in, and grew to understand. You know, and it's something I always carried along with me. So.
Yeah, that's it's important to understand, man. People that you know get their energy and feel validated by provoking people, when they can't provoke people, it becomes very volatile. You know,
and now due to a lot of things I've read, conversations we've had, I can look back and I can understand that those kids, or even now, those people that need to invoke and need to engage in that volatile way, have been engaged with in that volatile way before by someone who is reckless with their emotional discipline. So you almost feel bad for them. You know, you see people instigating or even hiding behind jokes and memes and using those same microaggressions. Like, you know, unfortunately, that's just how you learn to cope. You know, and there's definitely a lack of the ability to communicate, you know, in ways to ultimately find that higher truth.
For me, growing up, I was on the other end. From you, I was a provoker, provocateur.
Ooh,
I don't even know if that's a real word or not, but I was the instigator, you know, and because as I've, you know, over the years, you know, especially the last 15 years, where I've tried to take the time to break it down and understand the things I did as a kid and the way I acted as a kid, I understand that I was in a lot of emotional turmoil. You know, my dad wasn't around when we were growing up, and it made me very, very angry. And I had to project that anger on other people, and I had to instigate other people to make them mad, so I had a reason to swing off. Right. And a really good friend of mine, man, he's still like a brother to me ever since we were 12, 13 years old. You know, I've known the kid for my whole life, and he lived with us for a little while, and I would just try to stoke that fire in him to get him to fight me. And he got to the point where he was just like, man, he goes, you can say whatever you want to me. He's like, I'm not going to fight you. And finally, I would just pop off and I'd hit him. Like, what do you do now, motherfucker? You know?
Well, that's a different story at that point.
Yeah, well, yeah. So I'm not, like, he won't instigate, he won't swing first, fine. Like, I'm not getting what I want, I'm going to get what I want, you know? And that's, and man, I'll tell you what, man, that's still, like, that causes still emotional turmoil. The fact that the reality of the situation is I can't change that now, and I have to learn, I have to grow, and I have to be better. I have to be disciplined, you know, because that's not the kind of person I want to be. That's not my goal. It's not my long-term goal, you know. And now I'm much more willing to let people talk down to me and just not sweat it anymore. You know, and I feel with that mentality, I get a lot more out of conversations and stuff too. And I'm not, and when I think there's a lot of empathy in me for people that act that way, because I get it. I understand that feeling, and it's not a good place to be. Even when you're in it, you don't feel good about it. You don't know maybe that it's going on,
because you can't escape it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. And also, I would imagine that your fists being legal weapons are probably another reason why people don't really give you. Try and get that energy from you.
I try to keep that one in my back pocket, man. If it ever got to a physical altercation, I'll just try to grapple them.
Sure, of course. I don't want to.
I don't want to fight anymore, man.
Professional and responsible, but you know, that still started with making choices to be more emotionally disciplined.
Yeah.
And there are different ways. You're talking about the way in which you came up and you had a lot of pent up anger and frustration, and that's how you took it out. I shared similar upbringings, and I saw that when people took it out on others, I felt what that was like. So I never grew up doing that. But I still needed a place to put that frustration or the emotion that I wasn't able to come to terms with, and I would take it out on myself more often. You know what I mean? With just like living recklessly or alcohol and things like that. So whether you're taking it out on others, taking it out on self, or however you look at it, it comes from that root core of really being able to deal with things like emotions, and things that are at first out of your control.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely.
But
what we got from Monty there?
Monty, he said something, I want to see if I can remember without crawling back there to look at it, but he said that we are not the sum of the words that are used against us.
Yeah.
And then he kind of put your name and pointed up top to it. So
I like it.
He's got all the quotes today.
Yeah.
Super quotable. Man.
Yeah, he's obviously been doing a lot of reading over the quarantine.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I wouldn't be surprised that a lot of people are more in touch with their emotions, given whether it's been the COVID or the disease, or the social issues that are going on right now. It's hard not to be in touch with these emotions.
We talked about too that. So I've heard people call the beginning of the pandemic is the great pause. Everything stopped, and all of a sudden shit got real quiet. What's the first thing? So at the end of the night, you put your phone down, turn off the light, lay down in bed, TV's off. What's the first thing that happens?
Mine starts running.
Yeah, so thank you, man. So now we can actively avoid that a lot, whether it's through like our daily routine. Some of us sleep with the TV on. We have our phone in our hand until the second that we try to fall asleep with our phone in our hand, right? People turn the fan on for background noise, stuff like that, right? Because when things are completely quiet, we're unfamiliar with that feeling. Right? So now when the world stopped, when the world got quiet, we're just boom, face to face with it. Got to deal with it. So I whether you become volatile and you're very frustrated, and you let depression and anxiety and sloth and all these, whatever distraction, we relapse into addiction and all this stuff, because that's us exploding, that's us being volatile, that's us succumbing to the emotion. Or you face it and you say, oh fuck, I have work to do. And you make that disciplined step and understand, like, yes, I have work to do. Right now, it's time to do that work.
And what a fucking blessing. What a blessing, because every single one of those emotions and more, I remember cycling through. Even at being the place in which I am and conversations that we have, we still have to do our own work on a regular basis. So I remember cycling through each and every one of those reactions to the situation, and having to get through and find my way on the other side. And I'm even more grateful for these type of conversations, either had here or outside of here, that allow me to, when it's difficult to do it myself, connect with someone else who's gone through it or had gone through it, and even before all the shit, on a regular everyday basis, work on that maintenance. That self-maintenance, and that's the type of stuff that we talk about daily, because we try to put ourselves through daily. And so there are definitely groups of people out in the world that were more prepared for the world stopping and coming face to face with whatever that you have been avoiding for however long. There were more people emotionally available, emotionally able to adapt and overcome that. And I think those were some of the people, a lot of the people that were still kind of putting out that hope and that shining the light, giving the direction for those who are newer you know, in that situation.
Yeah, absolutely. So I definitely found myself, even at times, I started realizing I was drawn more to certain people because you know, not for nothing, man. We sit here week after week after week, and there's sometimes when I'm reflecting on it, sometimes I think that we, in this situation, it might get misconstrued that we're sitting in a chair of expertise. You know, we're coming from a place where we know, and I don't. You know, this is always just perspective, man. It's always just thought. It's just conversation. You know, it's not any level. You know, I'm not finished with any of this stuff. This is stuff I'm actively working on. This is my current place of understanding, and I still need people that are beyond me, and people that are in different places, and people with different understandings and stuff. These conversations, these happen daily for me. These happen with more and more and more people. And sometimes I get a little carried away. Sometimes I get a little forceful with my initiation of these kind of conversations.
Right.
I was having a conversation with my brother John the other night, and he asked me for just like a quick little workout. Just like, hey man, just like, what's something I can do at home? And so we're chatting back and forth. I gave him a couple of things, and he was really excited about what was going on, about getting moving with it and stuff. And I could not help myself. It felt almost pompous, and I kind of making a caricature of myself with this. Is I just felt so compelled to remind him. I was like, listen, man, motivation's bullshit. Motivation is temporary. I said, don't buy into that. I was like, fuck motivation. I was like, discipline. Right. And my almost like a catchphrase for me now, but discipline is that promise we make to ourselves to fulfill the goals we set when we're motivated. And he just responded back, true. I'm like, yeah, all right, man, my bad. You didn't need all that shit right now, man.
I could see you yelling at him. You are not special.
I mean, it was through text. I kept my cool. I didn't quite go that far, but I mean, yeah, that's where it goes sometimes, man, because I get so wrapped up in it, and then when I see an opportunity to try to initiate a conversation, I get so excited about it. Yeah. So I get excited, I have an emotional response, I lose the discipline. I can't just let the conversation be a casual conversation. I'm like, oh fuck, this is something I know. Let me, you know, and start monopolizing it, and so just kind of laughing at myself for little shit like that. So eagerness and excitement is also an emotion.
Because the truth of the matter is, like for me, this is how I learn. Conversation like this, or trying to work at a daily basis or setting a routine. But people learn differently. And some people don't learn by standing in front of a drill sergeant who just tries to drill the shit in their head. Some people have to learn other way. And I'm not necessarily speaking about John, but I'm just speaking more so in general.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And sometimes to get caught up and not have that emotional discipline, even when you're excited, even when you're elated, you don't have time to slow down and think, oh, how does this person best communicate and receive information? What is it that they need? And how do they hear what I'm saying?
What is their goal?
What
is their level? And how can I facilitate them reaching that goal? Because it's not always about me just expressing and just running off in the mouth. Sometimes people will come to me and say, I want advice about this situation. And, okay, cool. You initiate that conversation. Sometimes, man, like I just got to relax and watch people grow on their own and enjoy that. You know what I mean? It's my little brother, and I love him immensely. And I got a little excited, and I want the best for him. I have goals for him. He has his own goals, and taking a step back and saying, okay, wait, you're excited. He's at this point where you feel like this advice is going to work. Does he want that? Is that going to be the best for him, or is it just going to be the best for him to say, okay, man, go get it. Stay tight.
No, I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off.
Oh no, you're good, man. You're good.
But it is awesome to see, because he'll take a snapshot of his running route. He's like, and I see the progression. He hit me up just the last time. You ran 4 miles in 45 minutes. And like, awesome. I could be like, well, you could probably knock off some time if you do this, or do that, or quit smoking. Actually, I think he did quit smoking. But instead, from where it started to where it's at, like, that's fucking great. It's dope.
You are where you are, and it's the next step for it. Regardless of, there's always shit to fix. There's always shit to fix, man. Whether you win, whether you learn, whether you lose, right? You learn, right? You learn when you win, you learn when you lose, you learn when you stay still, you learn. But as long as you understand that whatever you're learning, you have to use that to propel you forward, right? If you're standing still, you recognize that you're standing still, you're saying, fuck, I need to get moving. That's a learning process, man. And even people moving backwards, that's a learning process too sometimes. You know, people relapsing, going back to drinking, going back to smoking, going back to their, you know, whatever vice they have, that's a relapse, but that's okay, because that's a learning process too, man. And understanding when, for me, I've had to do that a lot, because I feel I get wrapped up in that, and I wanna talk, and I wanna tell people, because I get excited, man, and I think about this shit a lot, and I always want to share it with people, and especially things that I found that I feel are profound for me. I want them to be profound for somebody else. Like, I got excited, sent you that interview earlier that I hope you watch, because I'm really excited about it, and I think you'll get a lot out of it.
I'm watching.
Right. But that's it, you know, it gets to that point where I get over eager and I get overzealous, right? And those are emotional responses, because you look at somebody that's passionate, and people are like, man, he's passionate, but passion's an emotion. That Ego's Enemy book that we read talks about how passion can be negative sometimes, you know, a lot of times, because it's an emotional response and it overrides our logical faculties, you know what I mean? And then we don't say, okay, well, what is the best thing to do to help this person reach their goal? And sometimes the best thing you can do, man, and I've been trying, but I run my mouth a lot. I've really been trying just to shut the fuck up sometimes and just accept where people are and what they're saying, and understand more, you know, because the less I talk, the more I can learn.
Yeah. You know? And that's it. That shit. Yeah. The very last sentence was exactly how I was like waiting the whole time to be like, I find that I learn better in this way, and then you knock it out. So I guess we'll just sit here in silence for 15 seconds while we. But no, it is a great point. You know, allowing people that space, and like you said, learning how they learn. Like, I find things that I've missed. I find ways that I could approach a situation or a person better, or even my own progress or routine. You know, how I can approach that better. So, yeah, all things up, man.
Absolutely, man. And I think I really, for me, the kind of tying all that, you know, that little tangent, but tying it back into discipline is, for me, a point of growth and something I want to continue to work on, and I try to prioritize working on in every conversation, is the discipline of being receptive, to being understanding, to being empathetic. You know, whether or not ultimately I agree with the person, or with their learning style, or with where they're at in life, it doesn't matter if it resonates with me personally, but taking the time to be empathetic and to listen and to try to understand, and even if somebody says something I don't like, trying to quell that emotional response. I can be angry about something somebody said, but a lot of times what happens is somebody pisses you off, and what do? You jump on them. Right? You jump on them and you try to show them. You're like, you motherfucker, I can't believe you would say this, but that immediately truncates our ability to empathize, right? And no, I don't believe all lives matter. I don't believe that all people are worth being empathetic to. You know, I believe there are generally evil and bad, miserable people in the world. I believe that they exist, and I do not feel like they are as important as other people that are genuinely suffering and genuinely trying to bring something to the world. That being said, it's not for me to make that decision, and if I don't fully try to empathize with that person, I can't decide for myself if I actually think they're good or bad, or they have value, or whatever, you know. And ultimately, it's not my duty to assign that kind of level to somebody, whether or not they're worthwhile. It's my personal opinion, but that's the thing, is my opinion is always emotional. You know, my opinion, sometimes it's logical, you know, but a lot of times your opinion is based on what you understand as logic and you understand as truth, and the more you try to empathize and understand, the more you can reveal your own truths and decide what you think is true. You know, because I'll tell you what, when I was 19, I did not have the same truths I have today. You know, and very emotional, very not disciplined. You know, and today we went hard on the emotional discipline, and I think that it felt good to kind of explore that a lot. But I mean, your discipline, it radiates into everything you do daily, but you have to understand it as emotional discipline too, because how often do we talk about if you wake up in the morning and you don't feel good, you do it anyways. You get up and you run anyways, right? Because it doesn't matter how you feel. You can be sad, you can be anxious, you can be upset, you can be angry, but it doesn't matter, because if you let that override making that step, you know, for like you with your runs and stuff, I mean, there have to be mornings, especially within the past 3 months where you just felt overwhelmed?
What, as far as the run?
Yeah, just
only every day. Like
only every day.
Real talk. I hate running. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't enjoy. I can find once I'm in it, I can find enjoyment in getting lost in it.
Yeah,
and I've had to add purpose to my run outside of just the health benefits. You know,
Sure.
I've had to, like I say, probably time and time again. That's where I do all of my writing. You know, write it in my head when I'm running, or think about you know, maybe the topics and dissect some of the things we're going to talk about. But I have to make use for running other than just the run itself.
Right.
So just because I do it try to do it every day, isn't because I necessarily enjoy it.
Right.
I've learned to love it,
Right.
but I dread it every time when I'm lacing up my shoes, or when it's 91 degrees out like it was yesterday. You know, it's not the first thing I want to do, but it benefits me in too many ways not to appreciate it as such.
Absolutely. So that, I mean, that, yeah, we, like I said, we hammered on very specifically emotional responding and stuff. But I mean, that's an emotional response to a situation is dread. Is I don't want to do this. I don't want to is an emotion. I think that's an emotion all in and of itself. You know.
Right.
I don't want to. Okay. Who hasn't felt that emotion? Why don't you want to? I don't fucking know. I just don't want to.
Right.
I don't want to. But you go do it anyways, man. That's discipline. You decided you were gonna do this. Do it. And get it done with.
You know, and it helps to know why you're doing it. You know, intention. You know, that's why the goal setting is important.
Yeah.
And what discipline allows is for us to reach that.
Absolutely.
And a lot of times emotion gets in the way. You know, we talk about, you know, COVID and the 6 feet distancing, but it's almost like creating.
Definitely at 6 feet.
Definitely at 6
Definitely
feet.
At 6 feet.
But you know, it's almost thinking about it like an emotional distancing as well. You know, 6 feet emotional distancing, so it doesn't get in the way. So you don't get whatever the falling victim to. I don't want to convey it too much with COVID or anything like that. Right. But being able to separate yourself from those emotions, you know, to help you find your way to the other side and remember why you're actually, you know, in that position that you're in.
I like that emotional distance.
I
don't want to catch your anger. I don't want to contract your anger, so I'm going to set myself away from it.
And even of your own emotions, you know, because when you talk about the volatileness, that's when a situation feels like it's right here. You know, whether it's your anger or whether it's someone else's, and to be able to, you know, allow your emotions to be at a distance, you know, and almost to feel and to view them from a third person, third point of view. You know, I think is necessary.
Being able to stay objective.
Absolutely.
That's awesome, man.
But you know, that stuff takes discipline. You know, to work at, to understand, and discipline to when it's pushing on you. You know, to understand, hey, just ease off a little bit. You know, just ease off a little bit. So.
And that, I mean, discipline takes practice, and it takes failure, and it takes learning, and it takes, you know, a little bit of success, a little bit more failure. You know, and
who was saying as far as success is not necessarily what it looks like. Success is you fail and then you try again and you fail better. Somebody was saying that. I don't know who it was, but I like that concept.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, no, that's all part of discipline. Man.
Absolutely.
All part of discipline.
Absolutely. Love it.
Cool.
Yeah.
How do you feel?
Awesome, man.
I feel great too.
I'm very, very, very glad that we had the discipline to have the conversation. Very glad we got to spend some time visiting this morning. Monty, Alex, Cassie, despite your shit talking, thank you guys for tuning in. If you guys are watching on this on YouTube later on, thank you so much for taking the time, investing in what we have to say, contributing in whatever ways you do to our conversations. Thank you guys for riding out with us. Thank you guys for coming back. You know, we've been a little spotty lately with the situation, but yeah, it's amazing.
Sure.
It's been awesome.
Well, yeah, glad to be back, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, brother. And we'll be seeing you guys all again very soon.